Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming. My name is Silas. I am the CTO of Monax. I'm also a maintainer of Hyperledger Burrow, which is a blockchain framework that Monax originated and donated into Hyperledger, I think, a couple of years ago. What I'm here to give you a demo of is a thing called the Monax platform. The Monax platform runs on top of a decentralized network based on Burrow called the Agreements Network. So to delineate those two, the Agreements Network is about representing agreements as a package of legal pros, some parameters, and a legal process. And it'll become clear, I think, as we go through the demo what that involves. But the layer that you're seeing here is Monax's sort of proprietary, fairly thin layer on top of the Agreements Network. Beneath that, we have a project called Blackstone that is open source that contains the Solidity contracts that power the Agreements Network. Other people could build different types of platforms. On top of the Agreements Network, we have a group of network co-founders from legal tech companies and others who are running the validators, and there's an underlying market model and other things. So if you're interested in that, please do come and ask me or come to our stall. But this is really about the platform layer. So this is me just logged on to the platform, and I'll just talk you through some of the onboarding screens here. So the idea of this is to give you a view of what your obligations are over a dossier of agreements. So we're representing agreements that have some moving parts. That internal state, as the agreement progresses, for example, we go into a default clause. If somebody doesn't provide us with enough widgets, we need to sign an NDA at this point. All of these state transitions can emit events that can drive downstream systems, can instantiate other agreements, and can generally talk to each other. To do this, we generate user tasks that appear in an inbox view that you'll see in a bit. So you can log onto the system, and you can see from all of your agreements, what do I need to do now? We wrap up agreements in a template. The underlying object is a thing called an archetype, and it's this triple of legal pros, parameters, and legal process. And that process is modeled in a thing called business process modeling notation. And we've implemented an engine to run that on top of Burrow. So what I'm going to do is take you over to some templates. So here we can see some publicly available templates. And let's pull up a rental agreement. So I choose this because it has a relatively non-trivial. Can you see that okay? Relatively non-trivial process. So you can see here there's some metadata at the head. There's some parameters that I was mentioning there. So I'll draw your attention to this Boolean here that says building before 1978. So was the building that's being rented out here built before 1978? And there's some relevance to that we'll see later on in the process. Number of payments. So this is, for example, in a short assured tenancy in the UK, you would have maybe 12 payments, and then it lapses into another state. You could have any number of payments you want. And then we have two signing parties. We have a landlord and a tenant. The way that we do processes is we have a formulation process. So a formulation process is the thing that goes and collects its signatures in a basic model, but it can go and do other things. It could call off to a KYC service, anti-money laundering check, or something like that. In this case, it's relatively simple. We have a distinguished start state. These long rectangular swim lanes represent participants. So at the top, I think we have the agreement parties. So this is stuff that everyone has to do. At the bottom, we have the tenant. And then the enclosing box is the process. So this is a BPMN. I don't know if anyone's familiar with it, but it has well-defined semantics. It's an executable workflow standard. So if we have on the agreement building before 1978, what we'll have to do is sign this lead paint disclosure. And then after that, we can go into signing the agreement, and the agreement is formulated. Down here, we have how the agreement actually runs. So again, we have the full signing parties, the system at the top, so this is no distinguished participant. And then we have a few different types of tasks. So these boxes are called tasks, and this thing with a cross in it is called a gateway that is a choice element. So we start here in the system start, we go through, we make a payment, we go into another type of task here, which is a system task. So this runs a smart contract to do a check. In this case, it just checks against one of the parameters we saw earlier, number of payments, whether it needs to make another payment. If it does, go back, take another payment. So it's a simple loop, but it shows the kind of type of thing you can represent using this process modeling. So let's go and create this agreement. So rent my shed. Let's say that my shed is a pre-1978 and presumably has plumbing. We'll have 100 payments. I'm going to select myself as both the tenant and the landlord in this case to save me hopping between logins. But as you can see, this is multi-tenant system. The visibility here, all of the process modeling is going on what is a public permission chain ultimately. We can choose to hide the satellite data in encrypted form off chain, but it's worth saying this is not private in a particularly strong sense. For example, if you know that the process is taking 100 payments, or it's easily de-anonymized. It's not trying to be private in that sense. External references. This is to do with how many pieces of evidence we can attach to this agreement. So we have the ability to hash some files like maybe a receipt or invoice and attach it as evidence in a generic way. This is a feature that we're iterating on for more generality. So we hit here a quick review screen of the process and then a final review. Now this is then going to send transactions off to the chain. The spinner of doom comes in here. So we have a few transactions, some of which need to be serially run, so we end up waiting there for a confirmation. So that's gone on to the chain. So we've now formulated this agreement. Okay, fantastic. So if I go through now into the tasks, you'll be able to see that I've got a few other tasks that have been generated here from similar agreements. And my rent my shed agreement, I may be off the page. I'll show you on this task. So tasks come up here within the agreement, and you can sign on that task. And via a user proxy, your signature will be collected and will move that task along. So there's other ones here from the lead paint disclosure. Now, if we go on to the set of agreements, of which there's a number, if we look at, for example, rent my outside toilet there, I think I moved that one along. So you can see that there's a live process flow through the agreement. And if we go back to the tasks and we start clicking stuff off, I've created slightly too much task spam here. Rent my shed. And I've also called too many rent my shed. It's not very creative of me. But I think you can get the idea. So this is another one that's pre-formulated. You can see that we've started going through and going to payments, and the process is spinning around. Now we can absorb events from this with the service that we have, and we can drive other downstream things. Now, briefly, and yeah, I'm getting some emails now to say you have a pending task, you've signed a task, and we'll get notified that way. I'd just like to show you the other thing in this layer. We have a business process modeling engine editor here, so you can build your own processes. And the breed of human being that we are trying to get on our network is this emerging discipline of legal engineer. So a lawyer who can scale some of their knowledge, automate some of these things, but still be around to respond to things. And to do this, we have three types of essential tasks. We have a user task that waits for some user input. So it'll sit there, and you'll go and you can click on your task that way, or you can talk directly to the chain. We have synchronous tasks, which are like the payment counter task. So that immediately just counts according to a smart contract. And we have, so you'd see in there, we have this bidirectionality on the smart contract application activity. And we have an async task, which can say, I'd like to get some information from an oracle, post that request. The oracle can then put it back, and the process will wait until it gets in from that. So we have a game at the moment that is live, that is a weather guessing game. That uses the process modeling, and you guess the mean temperature of a city, and we're using Wolfram Alpha, using this kind of activity to post back to the chain. So yeah, I'll leave it at that, and I think we maybe have a bit of time for some questions, if anyone does. Yes? Do you want to grab the mic a sec?
What open source tools are you using? I recognize one in the UI, but what kind of underlying services for like BPM and for maybe for forms management or document management?
Loads. So within our node distribution, we have Hyperledger Burrow, which is providing our core consensus network. We have a stateless encryption service called Hoard that stores on backends, IPFS, file storage. We have Blackstone, which is a project we've recently open sourced, and we're planning to submit to Hyperledger. So if you go Monax/Blackstone, now that's a set of smart contract libraries that do the business process modeling. We then have a Node.js-based API service that exposes a kind of builder interface for assembling these graphs. We have React and Express and stuff like that on the front end on the Monax platform. I feel like I'm missing out something.
Is it current window? Yeah, that's BPM and IO.
Oh, right, the front end, yeah. And I think so. We've done some editing to that. So we support a more limited set of BPM than the whole thing. So I mean, in fact, I think fully fledged BPMN is not even unambiguously executable. There's BPEL, but with this, you know, it's kind of like a graphical programming environment, I guess. So there's quite a bit you can do with it. Yes?
So a lot of agreements are regulated, and so do you build tools that also drive towards standard forms that comply to various regulations, or how do you deal with the regulatory environment around agreements in general?
Yeah. So I think something that I probably elided over here a bit is that the underlying agreements network is built around the notion of three types of participant: legal producers and legal consumers and legal testers. So as it happens, we're a company that has a legal engineering team and was founded by a lawyer, in fact. So we will be producers on our own network, but we're also trying to bring in other producers who will be solving some of these problems themselves. In terms of standardizing terms, we deliberately have the templating and the parameters part is quite a black box at the moment. There are other legal engineering companies that are trying to get more inside the legal prose, if that's what you're driving at. We're focusing on a dual integrated piece of legal text with a process. The process is not exhaustive of what's contained and mandated by the legal text, but we are, I guess the flat answer is we're not working at the term or the clause level at the moment. However, we would expect the agreement network to be able to support tooling on top of this. So some interesting things might be around contract negotiation platforms that are working in the text and maybe can emit both process segments as well as bits of text. That's very much something we'd like to support, but we're not trying to solve all these problems. It's an ecosystem play, and we won't control the agreements network even. So. Cool. Thanks very much.